Welcome back to the Tennis Doctors, the podcast where three physicians talk about the world of professional men's tennis and the ATP Tour. Joining me as always, Bilal Ahmed.
Hey, good to be back.
Arjun Watane.
Hey again, glad to be back.
I'm Jay Sridhar. I'm sipping my Fever Tree ginger beer in honor of the official sponsor of the Queen's Club. We got our grass court backgrounds on. Wimbledon draw just came out. We're recording this on June 24th, 2022. And so what we're going to do is do a quick draw analysis. There are a lot of draw analyses out there. Some exceptional ones will probably overlap some of them, but we like to do things a little different. We're going to go section by section rather than kind of look at overarching themes. And we'll end by kind of talking about who we think is going to get to the deeper round. So without further ado, just dive into the draw. Let's start in section one. So section one is where your top seed will be. This is the top quarter of and so just to outline sort of the basics of what this section looks like, right? So Novak Djokovic is the top seed. The highest seed he would face in a fourth round match looking ahead would be Riley Opelka. On the other side of this quarter, the high seed, Carlos Alcaraz, and then the high seed he would face in a quarterfinal, Jannik Sinner. But some interesting names within this section that will be recognizable to the listeners: Andy Murray. We've got John Isner. We have Fabio Fognini. We have Lucas Rosal of Nadal beating fame back in, I believe, was it 2012 that he took out Nadal? And even some newer names like Tim van Riethoven, our favorite Dutch qualifier who just won a big grass tournament with a few upsets. So, Bilal, I'll start with you. When you look at this quarter, give me like one thing that sort of stands out to you about this section that you take away.
I think actually Murray has a decent chance of getting to the fourth round. I actually like his section quite a bit. I know if you look close, it's Jannik Sinner's in there, which is, obviously a threat in terms of seedings, but I don't think there's a really strong grass court player who actually has a significant advantage over Murray. That's one thing I actually feel good about if he recovered from that abdominal strain that he had just recently pretty well with Ivan Lendl back in the corner too. Always got to like his chances on grass, so I like this section for him.
Arjun, your thoughts on this section or anything Bilal said?
Yeah, I agree. Djokovic, I have Djokovic making the quarters. I have Van Riethoven making the fourth round. I think he's someone with good enough data recently winning a tournament on grass. So I think if he keeps up that momentum, I think he steamrolls Opelka and goes straight to the quarters. And then next I have Murray over Sinner. Murray, veteran player. We know that he's won this tournament in the past and has been playing exceptional on grass this year as well. I have him beating Alcaraz in the fourth round. Both of you, I've done research with both of you all, and I like data. And Alcaraz has no data on grass court. He hasn't really won a match. I think maybe he won one last year, but there's very little to no data on him. He does have the tools to win on grass. He has the offensive instincts. He looks to destroy you. His kick serve is excellent, but on grass it's not going to be as heavy, of course. And so I think the lack of grass court experience, I would take Murray over Alcaraz. Then so that's that first quarter. I have Djokovic and Murray in the quarters. So yeah,
I'm gonna say I agree with both of you. I mean, this is we're gonna talk about this a lot, but the problem for a lot of these players, there's not much grass court data in general, right? There aren't that many grass court tournaments. 2020 season was wiped out, and if a guy wasn't around 2021, so like Alcaraz, for example, he's young. He basically has no grass resume. We would have loved to have seen him this year, but he had this elbow injury, pulled out. His only data point is he's 1-1 at Wimbledon. He won his first round match last year, which showed mental toughness taking a tight match. And then he got steamrolled by Medvedev. And you can say that's a good loss because it's Daniel Medvedev. He's current number one ranked player in the world. You could also say that's Medvedev on grass. Is he maybe even a top 10 or top 15 player? Probably, but he's not like a Djokovic. He's not a Berrettini on grass, right? So for me, I look at this, I see a lot of names. I mentioned there are names in this section. A lot of these names are not in good form right now. And I know that form is based a lot on the clay season and the end of the hard court season. But like Kokkinakis, this is a guy who's super talented. It would be you'd look at that and be like, oh, that's a tough second round potential. But number one, he may not win that match. He's 2-6 or 2-5 in his last 7 matches. He really hasn't done much this year. Hasn't played on grass, I believe. You have Kekmanovic, who had an awesome match with Alcaraz in Miami, but since then has been in a total slump. Hasn't really done much since losing to Djokovic in the quarters at Belgrade. Rosal, I brought up earlier, but now he's 37. He's a qualifier. Again, probably not going to get out of his first round match. And then Opelka was a guy we talked about in the preview, but Opelka has also really been poor. He won Houston on clay, and since then he's 2-5. Since then, he lost to De Minaur in first round in one grass tournament. He lost to Krajinovic in the first round of the other one. Again, those are both good players, but they're not world beaters. So again, there's no guarantees Riley Opelka, like you said, is even going to get to that point. His second round match would be against Van Riethoven. My point is, I look at this and I'm like, there are no real guarantees in this draw. I wouldn't be shocked by anyone getting to any point, except I'd be shocked if Djokovic does not make the quarters. And then who is he playing there? I agree. Sinner hasn't played since the French. He's had blisters. He pulled out. He retired from his match against Rublev there. Haven't seen him on grass. It doesn't seem like his game is really designed for grass. He's got these really very long ground strokes, very heavy ground strokes. The low bounce probably won't do him any favors, and he doesn't get a ton of free points on serve. That's probably his biggest weakness. John Isner, again, could do well, could also lose first round. Andy Murray, I agree, if he's healthy. To me, it's like he's been kind of overdue to get a good draw in a slam and make a run. This is a good draw in a slam for Andy Murray at this stage in his career, right? Like I'm looking like his path, Duckworth he can beat. Then it's Isner or Kouakat. I think he can beat either of those people. Then he gets on, and it's like the Sinner, Wawrinka, Altmaier, Immer. None of those names on grass scare me. And all of a sudden, he's in the fourth round. And like you said, that's a match. It could be Alcaraz or it could be random person X. And finally, Alcaraz, coming back full circle, nothing would surprise me with Alcaraz. I think he's very mentally tough. He's not going to quit. He's got tools, if he's healthy and he figures it out. He reminds me a little bit of Nadal when he first started his grass career. Except I think Alcaraz's tools are even better for grass than Nadal's were, except he's not lefty, which gives him a little bit of a disadvantage holding serve. Alcaraz could make the quarters, beating Murray along the way. He also could lose in the first round. So I would say if I had to pick, I'd probably, again, go Djokovic versus Murray getting a little bit of a run. And I just don't see, we can talk about this at the end, I just don't see anyone beating Djokovic here unless Alcaraz somehow has some crazy out-of-body experience for,
Yeah, that too with Alcaraz's elbow, we really don't know what's going on with that now. He lost his practice match against TFO, which is not a big indicator, but it's something when pros practice, they practice to win. When Nadal practices, Murray, Djokovic, they practice to win. And if he was taking it light, that's one thing, but it doesn't really bode well or help our predictions. I 100% agree with you.
Well, speaking of TFO, he's in that next section. So the second quarter is we talked about this in the preview. We love Casper. He's a competitor. He's a fighter. He's the third seed at Wimbledon. I mean, back in the day when you'd have like a clay quarter who really didn't want to play on grass as your top seed or second seed, like a Carlos Moya or Correia or one of these people, like Casper Ruud's not going to go deep in a grass court event. If he wins a couple of rounds, it's a total win for him. He doesn't even get points for it this year. Everyone was wondering who's going to be that 5 through 8 seed who ends up in the Ruud section. And it's Hubert Hurkacz, who just won a tournament in Halle, we talked about. And now he is the high seed besides Ruud. So Ruud would be slated to play. His high seed in his section is Carreno Busta, and also not a world beater on grass. And on the other side, Hurkacz, his high seed is actually Cam Norrie, who is, he's got the home crowd and he's lefty and he's got some things. But I would argue that clay or hard is his best service, not grass. Yeah. So what stands out to you, Arjun, looking at this quarter? Like, is there anything about it that stands out? Is there anyone you're looking at that you're like, okay, this is someone who might make a run?
Yeah, so I think Hugo Humbert, I think he can definitely beat Ruud on grass. He is someone who's 17-11 on grass over the last over his career. In the past, he's also gotten to the third. He's won 3 rounds in the Wimbledon and won Halle last year. So, and he's gone deep in many other grass court tournaments. This last year's Wimbledon, he lost to Kyrgios in the first round of Wimbledon, but that match went 5 sets. He lost 9-7 in the 5th set. And so I have him making the quarterfinals, playing against Hurkacz, who he just lost to in Halle. And so, who and then eventually won Halle. So I have Humbert making the quarters. in his path, I have him beating Goffin. Goffin, he's coming back from an injury, has a couple wins, and he has a couple. Almost a veteran essentially, but I don't see him beating Humbert. Tiafoe, he's streaky. He can play well on grass. He can play terrible too. He's not a terrible grass court player. He's gone deep in challengers before, but again, challengers are not the ATP level, and Humbert will, I think, steamroll him if TFO gets to the fourth round. We also have Busta, who is a good challenger and who might light on fire as well. Cam Norrie, I agree. He can be a threat. He can go deep, but he's also a better hardcourt and clay court player. Dimitrov's in there, can also be a random threat here and there, but again, hasn't had a recent track record of anything. On grass, Dimitrov is a little better, I think. But against Hercox, Busta, Humbert, any of those players, I don't think he stands much of a chance to the higher level players.
Bilal, what are you thinking looking at this?
I honestly think this is the most interesting section of the draw itself, because it's a huge opportunity for a lot of these guys, especially for American tennis. I mean, I think Tommy Paul has actually a pretty decent chance. I don't think it's as straightforward for Hercox as obviously he's a strong favorite on the grass right now, but I think he could put up have some challenging opponents, especially Dimitrov, whose game you would think would translate well to the grass. Hasn't had the most consistent results on the surface. But I think him and Paul can also be pretty big threats to him. When I talk about American tennis, obviously I'm not talking about Dimitrov, but I'm talking about Tiafoe as well. I think Tiafoe has a game on the grass that really translates well. I actually see him coming out into this and into the quarters here. I think he actually has a decent chance to actually being a semifinalist. So if he can stay focused, handle the pressure, handle the occasion, I think he likes the big crowds. He likes the big moments. He plays well in those moments. He's not one to back down from one of those kind of opportunities. So I actually think this is a great draw for Tiafoe, and I'm actually excited to see how he does.
Wow.
Yeah. I was going to say one thing. I mean, the word that stands out to me, I agree, is opportunity. On a micro level and a macro level here, this outlines, again, how few great grass court players there are. You talked about Ugo Humbert, a guy who won Halle last year. He's really been in a funk this year. He's 5-14 on the year. He is out of the top 100 now. He's a guy who's most famous for being a real foil for Daniil Medvedev. Medvedev hates playing this guy, but and I wonder if it's sort of the Nadal thing too, where it's kind of the lefty. He just doesn't like that kind of matchup. But otherwise, I mean, yeah, Humbert could make a run, and I agree with you. It wouldn't surprise me, but it's opportunity, like Ruud and even Ramos Vinolas. That's an opportunity for Ruud. He can win a first round grass match. He didn't get somebody who's going to be a tough first round match. For Tiafoe is the guy I look at, and I look at he's 24 years old. He's 28th in the world. He's had some decent runs in slams. He made the quarters at the Aussie a few years ago. That was his breakthrough, lost to Nadal. He made last year, I believe, again, the fourth round at the US Open, loses to FAA. Again, he's such an entertaining player. But for me, it's like, if it's going to happen, this is a chance. This is a chance you have to take. Tiafoe, you go out there and lose your first round of qualifier or lose to Bedin in the second round. It's such a waste of an opportunity here, because the highest seed in his little mini section is Carreño Busta, who on grass is not a world beater. He should be able to win that match. And if you get out of that, who are the high seeds on the other side to get out into the quarters? You're looking at to get to play Hercox. You're looking at, Casper Ruud, and you're looking at Sebastian Baez. Both clay quarters are the other seeds. He should make the quarters if he's able to put it together. I don't know if I would pick him because he's just so hard to be consistent. But to me, it's opportunity. And then I look on the other side and I look at a lot. You talked about American tennis. How about British tennis? Ryan Peniston, former college player, had a big run just recently. He's got a pretty favorable draw, though. He's got Dimitrov in the second round. And for me, the macro opportunity is Hercox. Hercox, essentially, again, if he plays up to his potential, he should make the semis here. For me, if I had to pick, and we can start talking about our picks, I would probably have Hercox in that quarter playing. And it's hard to pick from the other section. I'd probably pick Tiafoe, but it could really be anyone. And then all hell breaks loose. If somehow Hercox gets hurt or he loses early, we're going to get a random semifinalist, and people are going to be whining that Djokovic had an easy draw in the semis when he gets there, because there really isn't another. You talked about Dimitrov, but there really isn't a certifiable threat, Arjun, that I see outside of Hercox. This is Hercox's section to lose, and I think it's the first time in his career that you can say he was the favorite to get out of a quarter of a slam.
I think Hercox has a straight beeline to the semis, and then you could have Tiafoe and Humbert battle it out in the fourth round, and the winner of that, I don't think can beat Hercox.
Let's go to quarter three. Bilal, you said quarter two is most interesting because, again, it's so wide open. Quarter three is my favorite section. I'm going to call this the pros and the social media pros section, because you've got the ultimate pro in Berrettini, who's not your high seed, but has to be your favorite here. Your high seed is Tsitsipas. We said the other section you want to land in besides Ruud is the Tsitsipas section. You didn't want to be in the Djokovic or Nadal section. So he's got control of this section, very similar to Hercox in the other section. But there's some dangerous flyers here, right? So if you look at Berrettini's draw, who are the high seeds he could be slated to face? Diego Schwartzman, not a bad draw to have as the high seed to get out of your section. But really the guy who's not in, we're talking about, is on the other side in this section. Nick Kyrgios is sitting there with a pretty tough path to get out, but certainly doable for him. And again, who's your high seeded Shapo, who's been in terrible form, and really we have low expectations at this point after a semi at Wimbledon last year. It would be love to pick him to come out, but like, for me, what do you think about Arjun when you look at this section?
Yeah, I think the two names you just named it that stand out. Three names actually: Berrettini, Kyrgios, Tsitsipas. Berrettini, I think he gets Brooksby in the second round. I think he maybe gets Schwartzman in the third round. And quarterfinals, Kyrgios. Kyrgios's path is also more difficult. I think he'll face Tsitsipas in the third round. Then his fourth round match is kind of up to whoever plays well. You have Shapovalov, who's kind of a lottery pick. Then you have Rinderknecht, who's been playing really well lately. Nakashima, he's a talented young American. And then Bautista Agut, who in the past has played really well, and he's kind of up and down and very streaky player. Krajinovic is right there waiting for Kyrgios in the second round. But I think Kyrgios can get through all those opponents. The thing with Kyrgios is he has the talent to make the quarters, definitely the quarters. The top five player in talent. Right now he wants to win. He's happy off the court. And so he has all the tools, I think, for the first time in his career to really make a deep run. But he's proven us time and time again when there's always a time in the match where he can flip a switch. It can be a bad line call. It could be a broken string. It could be someone yelling a racist remark at him. And all of those things should piss someone off. But he's one of those people who's a dynamite. And anytime you light a fire under him, he just explodes. So I have him making the quarters against Berrettini, but I would not be surprised at all if he loses to anyone in his path to the quarters.
Bilal, what are you thinking when you look at this section?
I actually like, I really like Jack Draper's chances here. I think he's been playing good tennis. I actually see him, I'm not saying he's going to get past Berrettini in that section, but I think he has a good shot to make it to this round of 16, see how he does there. I think with the crowd support, obviously home country, Wimbledon, always cheering for the Brits. I think he has a good chance to make that little mini section there. And the other side, I kind of like the idea of, I don't know. I've been saying for a few weeks now, I really like Kyrgios' chances, but I don't like the idea of him playing Krajinovic second round. I think that's actually kind of a dangerous matchup for him. We know that Krajinovic has been playing pretty well on the grass, just making final last week. So we'll see. I think there's my wish is that Kyrgios makes it out of that section and potentially faces maybe like a Bautista Agut in the round of 16, because Bautista Agut I do think does have pretty decent grass court game, but I don't know if Kyrgios has a focus for that. I can see Krajinovic making it through from that section to play Bautista Agut in the round of 16, and then who knows, we'll go from there. But at Tsitsipas, obviously, making the final Mallorca just yesterday. So we'll see how he does throughout the rest of the week or the tournament. But I don't know if the Mallorca tennis grass plays the same as the other locations in terms of Germany or in England. So we'll see how if that success translates to Wimbledon. Not really sure, but we'll see about these other names that they're out.
Yeah, I love your points, and I would say if I had a word to describe, I described this section kind of frivolously earlier, but if I describe this section again, this is still the Berrettini section for me. I'm Matteo Berrettini. I've been the second best player on grass now for a few years, and I got a pretty easy draw that's not going to tax me. And he's gotten plenty of warm-up tennis, so it's not like he needed the tennis to get back into shape. But best of 5 matches, he's got a pretty draw, Christian Guerin, then lucky loser qualifier, then like you said, Brooksby, who's been struggling, and then you're into the 4th round and you're looking at Demonar or Schwartzman. He started the tradition of Djokovic losing his first set at slam matches last year. Draper took the first set. Draper's good on grass, and he's a good young player. Like you said, he'll have the home support. He'll probably be on show courts. I do think that's very low chance he takes out the Berrettini train. And then Kyrgios, like you said, Krajinovic in the second round is sneaky, hard / difficult. I would say it's not really a hot take to say that's a more dangerous match for him than Tsitsipas on grass. But I also worry about the RBA match. I feel like RBA and Kyrgios is like a weird hard match for him, just because I feel like Bautista Agut is one of those people who he kind of sneaks up on players who lose focus because he's just so consistent. He hangs in rallies. There's nothing really flashy about his game. He's got a great forehand. He's playing Tsitsipas now in the final at Mallorca, so he's got a little bit of form coming in. I think it's really hard. I would love to pick Kyrgios to make the quarters. He hasn't made a slam quarter in a really, 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 really long time. I'm talking about since he beat Nadal in 2014 as a 19-year-old.
Yeah.
I want to say that it's probably going to be Bautista Agut who comes out of this section. But there's probably 4 different players besides who gets the Berrettini. I think there's 4 or 5 different guys who get there. I think Berrettini takes the section. Let's quickly run to the last section, which we'll call it the Tony Nadal section here, because we got Rafa and now his new student, FAA, in the same quarter. Nadal, the highest seed in his kind of 4th round group is Marin Cilic, who has a good track record on grass. And then FAA, the highest seed on his section of the grass is Taylor Fritz, who's, I believe, in the final of Eastbourne right now and finally picking up steam on grass. So, Bilal, let's work backwards. So what you look at this section, what stands out to you?
Honestly, I don't love the first round for FAA. I think Maxime Cressy is a really dangerous player right now. He is having success on the grass. I think that's going to be a tougher first round than we think. It could be upset territory there. I think obviously FFA makes it out of there. Obviously, he has a pretty easy section going forward, but that's a dangerous first round. I would be scared if I was him. I'm sure he's nervous about it.
Arjun?
Yeah, I think FAA, I think he has a interesting first round with Cressy, who's I think playing the finals of Eastbourne as well. And then we have I have him getting to the quarters pretty straightforward after that. I don't think Daniel Evans is a huge threat to him, but he is a good player. Can make things interesting, maybe 4 sets, but FAA has a more clear path. Holger Rune, he's not a clay court or grass court player from my memory. Is he right? He's not, right?
Very heavy, very, very much a clay based. He's won a ton of clay challengers on his way up.
Yeah. Fritz, as we said, he's in the finals tomorrow. I think I see him continuing his run over to the 4th round against FAA. And I have FAA beating Fritz in 3 or 4 sets as well. Interesting person here is Cilic. He's been making a run recently, both at the Roland Garros and after that, in some of the grass court tournaments. However, we also have a new name here, a relatively new name, Van de Zandschulp from the Netherlands. He is interesting because he won, I think he's a sleeper in this tournament. He won 3 rounds at Queens before losing to Berrettini. He won 2 rounds at Roland Garros before losing to Nadal. He was in the finals of Munich before pulling out due to injury against Rune. And finally in Rome, he beat Korda, lost to Ruud. So he's been gaining some momentum, and I think he's been playing well on grass as well. So I have him beating Cilic in the third round. Playing Nadal in the fourth round. Of course, with Nadal, I can't go against him. He has the experience and the expertise. So I have him in the quarters against FAA.
Yeah, I love your takes. I think that there's some interesting names here, but a lot of them are just names, you know.
Yeah, you have
Feliciano Lopez is semi-retired at this point. You know, Jack Sock, but he's in a qualifier at this point.
Yeah,
Cressy, you know, Cressy's in the final of Eastburn against Fritz. We're going to see that final tomorrow when this is out. He has the game to be dangerous on grass. I completely agree, and especially FAA has kind of struggled. He's been getting himself into trouble, getting into these tie breaks where he's holding serve fine, and then he gets into tie breaks, and you'll get into tie breaks against a guy like Cressy. It's dangerous. Yeah. Again, I view it similar to the Tiafoe thing. We said this about FAA before. This is I mean, if you really want to win a slam, you have to be able to beat Maxime Cressy in the first round.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if I know we'd say if Cressy was playing Djokovic, we'd be like, okay, you know, that's maybe a set, but like, that's not a scary match. Even Nadal, if he's really on, he shouldn't lose that match.
Yeah.
So FAA, for me, it's put up or shut up. Like, and I think his slam performance, we tracked this before, pretty consistent since Wimbledon last year. Quarters at Wimbledon, loses to Berrettini. Semis at US Open, loses to Medvedev. Quarters at the Australian Open, loses to Medvedev. Again, the same thing. Fourth round, French Open, loses to Rafa. I mean, he's losing to the big dogs at this point on those surfaces. If he's really wants to be a big dog, he's got to make the quarters here. The guy, you know, Cilic, you said is interesting, but the guy who could actually give Cilic problems if he can get there, I wouldn't be shocked if Gasquet beat Cilic in the second round if Cilic isn't on form.
Oh yeah.
You know, I was looking at their head-to-head. I would assume because they're like similar age, like Gasquet's a couple years older, they would have played a ton.
Yeah.
They're 2-2 lifetime career. They haven't played since 2016 in both. They've only played on hard. Cilic's only wins, he dropped the set in both matches. Now, these guys were vastly different players 6 years ago. Gasquet is 1 foot out the door at this point.
Yeah.
But he can still play on grass. He's got a good slice. He's got a good net game. And Cilic is one of those guys, you know, if he starts feeling it in the match, he gets very nervous. This is, again, to me, Nadal's draw looks tough on paper. It's like, oh, you got Sam Querrey, and then maybe you get Sonego, and then maybe you get Cilic, and then maybe you get FAA, and then maybe you get Berrettini. I maybe think the back half of that is chart, unless we can transition to talking about the big guys, like what we see going forward. But I actually think it's going to open up a little bit for him if he hangs in this draw and he doesn't get hurt. I wouldn't be shocked, like you said, if BTZ probably comes out of that section, or Cilic, or Gasquet, someone else is going to come out who's not really a threat to him.
Yeah.
And it's just about, did FAA survive Cressy or not? And if FAA gets out of that match, then that's going to be a blockbuster quarterfinal. And if FAA didn't get out of that match, then Nadal's going to have a pretty easy route to get to his semi here for the first time in 3 years.
Yeah. But then once I guess this is going a little far ahead. If you have Nadal and FAA in the quarterfinals, I think it's an easy win for Nadal again. Just
really
moving forward, I don't think he loses to Tony Nadal's new student. Nadal, if healthy, he's right now the best player in the world, and I don't think FAA has a maturity yet. Experience, expertise. He needs the fire to beat one of the big dogs, like you said. But I don't think if Nadal is the best player in the world right now, I don't think it happens this tournament.
Well, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
What do you think of, this is getting off topic. So we're going to talk about, so we're projecting, let's say Nadal FAA in the quarter. It came out during the French that Tony Nadal has a deal with FAA. And part of that deal in the contract is, hey, if you're playing Rafa, I'm not going to help. I'm not going to sit in your box. Was the deal from the start. It wasn't something he invented. Then people give him a lot of criticism. But the deal from the start is, hey, you play Rafa, you're on your own. I'm not helping. What do you think of that? I mean, what would you think of that? Like, if you were like I'm just trying to think of an equivalent athlete situation. That'd be like in the NBA, Doc Rivers being like, well, we're playing Austin's team tonight. I'm not going to coach the team because I don't want my son. Like, it's a little different because he coached Nadal all those years. But like, it's kind of odd, right? Like, there's because they're going to start playing each other more. They haven't really played each other much, but now, like, if FAA keeps going deep and Nadal stays on tour, they're going to keep playing each other in big matches.
I almost think it's a little bit of an incentive for him. I think that was kind of what kind of drove him to push Nadal when they played here at the French this recent just a few months ago. I mean, this was kind of an opportunity for him to prove his stuff. I think there's obviously a conflict of interest that we all know about there just because of the family relationship. And obviously it's kind of awkward for both players, but that is an opportunity for Felix to show like, okay, well, I'm on my own, but I can show you I have this stuff. This is why, I hired you. This is why you believed in me. This is why like I can do this. If you leave me on my own, let me show you my skills. I've said this, I think a couple episodes ago, but for me, if FAA has to make the semis here and at the US Open for me to really keep believing he has a chance. I really think that although Nadal's had a phenomenal year, I think the rhythm on grass it's hard for us to really tell where his rhythm is at. I know traditionally he's done well after cruising through not cruising, but when he makes it past the first week, he's done well in the second week. I think if he has those hiccups the first week, FAA may have a chance, should they meet in the quarters, to really capitalize there and say, okay, I'm in this for good. Like, let me take you out here. Wimbledon's honestly not the most successful from a consistency standpoint for Nadal. Obviously, he's 2 titles there, but I think this is the chance for him to make the semis. If he wants to do it, if he wants to prove himself, he wants to prove that he has the grit and the game for it, this is it.
I mean, we talked about this. We don't have to go ad nauseum. He needs a scalp. Like, he needs to come away with a big scalp. I know he beat Zverev last year in Wimbledon. We talked about Zverev had not beaten a top 10 player in a slam at that point. And I don't think FAA was in the top 10, but he was on his way up to the top 10. This is an opportunity to get a scalp. I think your best chance, you can make excuses for losing to Nadal at Roland Garros. You can make excuses if you lost to Medvedev on hard court. Nadal on grass is not unbeatable.
Yeah.
Not to paraphrase Novak Djokovic circa 2006, but like Nadal is not unbeatable here, right? I can't pick FAA in that match. He hasn't shown enough over the last couple of months on grass, but that is the match he needs to win to take the next step. And for me, you're about the round. I agree, semi here based on this draw, but let's say he was in the Casper Ruud section instead of Hercox. Getting the semis and losing to Djokovic, I would kind of be like, okay, man, like, we expected you to get out of that section, beat somebody who you're not expected to beat at this point, and then we can start talking about you as a real contender. Otherwise, you're just another, guy who goes deep like Burdick or one of these guys in the past who you're going to hang around, but you need to show at some point yourself and other people that you can beat these guys. So let's talk about where we think this is going. So I'm going to jump to the end, and you guys, I'm going to say the most likely scenario is a little bit of chalk where we get Djokovic, Hercox, and Nadal, Berrettini. Would you agree, Bilal?
I would give it to you. I would say that's fair. I think when we break down this draw, we talk about hypothetical people who may have a chance to really outshine themselves. But I think the safest bet at the end of the day is those 4 guys. I think either your contenders, the strongest current grass court players. I think Nadal has the confidence right now. I don't necessarily know where his game is at. It's hard to say based off the exhibitions he's been playing against Wawrinka, for example, in England right now. But I think given his draw, I like his chances. Like we touched on FAA. Obviously, it's an opportunity for him to really put a dagger in a big name. But I think at the end of the day, Nadal knows that he's having a phenomenal year and he would end it. So I do like the opportunity for those 4 guys meeting in semis. I think it's pretty likely, yeah.
Arjun, when you think about those matchups, I mean, to me, it feels like, again, it was those 4, and then FAA is kind of the 5th guy. So Nadal, in a way, got the toughest draw of those guys, if you talk about those 4. Djokovic probably got the best draw in the sense that Hercox got a pretty easy draw too, but he didn't get Alcaraz in his section. I mean, he couldn't get Alcaraz in his section, but Hercox and Djokovic had pretty reasonable draws. But I think Djokovic would rather get Hercox in the semis than Berrettini if he had to pick.
Yeah.
Who would you pick to make the final, and who do you think is going to win?
Yeah, I have the final 4, just as you mentioned: Djokovic, Hercox, Berrettini, Nadal. I think with Djokovic and Hercox, I think here experience wins, and Djokovic's game on grass court wins, winning I think 5 of the last 7 Wimbledons, winning the last 3 Wimbledons
that he's played.
And that he's
yeah, we can go through his track record in a second, but go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, so just there, and his just his overall game right there, I think really will dominate Hercox in that semifinal. So I've been winning, getting to the finals. Berrettini, Nadal, that's an interesting one. I think this one is Berrettini's to win. If he plays 110% every set, and if he doesn't give away any free points to Nadal, because then that's something Nadal will capitalize on. If it goes 5 sets, I think it's Nadal's match. I think Berrettini has to close it out in 3 or 4 or less, 4 sets or less. Otherwise, Nadal will get in the groove. He'll continue fighting. Even if Nadal's down 5-3 in the 5th set, he will not give up. So, and we don't know Berrettini's fitness. I'm sure it's there, but when Nadal is pounding away for hours and hours, it's gonna wear you down. I have Berrettini winning, getting to the finals. Berrettini versus Djokovic. And are we talking about the champion now?
You think it's Djokovic?
I think Berrettini takes the cup now. I think
wow. You think he's taking Nadal and Djokovic back to back to win a slam?
I think it's what has to be done, and I think it's shown last year. Is
this what you want to happen, or is this what you think is going to happen? So
if we go power rankings, then of course Djokovic is 1, Nadal is 2, or vice versa, and Berrettini's 3 for power rankings. But if we go for the person who needs to take the next step, I think that it's Berrettini's tournament to win, and he's right there. He has all the tools. His backhand has actually improved a lot. And neither of those 2 players are really, I think they're better than most players at defending his slice attack and his serve. But Berrettini is just such a force right now. And yeah, I want him. I'm biased. I want him to win. I want Djokovic to lose. But talent to talent, if we look at this past grass court, clay court season, Berrettini has shown up and Djokovic hasn't. Historically, if we look at power rankings and just power rankings in general, Djokovic should win. But I think there has to be a time when the tides turn, and I think it's right now it's happening for Djokovic, and I think it's happening for Berrettini to win, especially after losing last year's.
So this is none of us love Novak Djokovic. So let's give Novak Djokovic his due, because it denigrates him a little bit for us to be like, oh, Djokovic is going to get there. I mean, that's part of the respect for him. This is his track record at Wimbledon since 2009, right? Actually, let's take it back to 2007. Semifinal, second round loss to Sapin. Quarterfinal, semifinal, wins, semifinal, final, win. Third round loss to Query, which was right after he won the non-calendar slam, was a little demotivated. Quarterfinals, retires against Berdych. Win, no Wimbledon, win. I mean, my point is, he's not going to lose to just anybody if he's not hurt.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's unreasonable for us to expect him to make the final. He's proven, he's earned the respect that he is going to be there at the end. You have to take it from him. And even if you look at his last slam matches that he actually lost, I'm not talking about when he retired against Wawrinka at the US Open, or he got kicked out against Karenia Busta for hitting the lineswoman. He really hasn't had a bad slam loss since his resurrection in 2018. His slam losses are Medvedev US Open final, Nadal twice at the French Open, and then team semifinal 5-set at Roland Garros. I mean, my point is that it's really hard for me to imagine him losing to anybody except Nadal and maybe Berrettini or FAA if they come from that side. For me and Bilal, you'll give your pick in a sec. I mean, I think I'm going to qualify this. I think Berrettini is going to beat Nadal in the semis, but I think that it's probably because FAA is going to take a lot out of the tank. I think that's going to be a good match if FAA gets there. And I think Nadal is going to be a little flat and he's going to lose to Berrettini. The weather may play a role. It's not going to be hot and warm where the ball's kicking up a little bit on the grass. It's going to be cooler in London. There's some rainy days in there. The roof may be closed for some of these matches. And all of those things are going to swing the pendulum in favor of bigger servers. Mm-hmm. And Berrettini is a bigger server. Djokovic is actually a really big server on grass and a good server. Hercox is a big server. FAA is a big server. Nadal is not a big server. That does not help him. His best bet would be hot and dry, and the grass gets worn, and people are running around the baseline trying to pick up his topspin, which is kicking up higher than it should on grass because it's not hitting the grass. It's actually hitting the ground under the grass. I just don't know if that's going to happen with the weather outlook and how things look. So for me, I think it's going to be Djokovic, Berrettini. And you know what? My heart wants to pick Berrettini. It's really hard for me to pick. It's really hard for me to pick him to beat Djokovic until I see it. It's just, we saw that match 3 slams in a row last year. and you can rinse and repeat. It's like watching the same match over and over again. The guy fights, he fights and he fights, but in the end, whenever Djokovic needs a big point, he just goes backhand to backhand until he gets an error or a weak ball to put away. And I don't know what Berrettini does to flip the script. His backhand's better recently. He's hitting it down the line a little bit. But Djokovic, he goes into metronome mode. He's not going to make mistakes, and he's just going to keep getting the ball to the Berrettini backhand on break points and set points and on match points. And that's how he's going to end up winning this match. And that's what happened. If you watch those matches, those last 3 matches at the slams they played, that's what happened. Any big point, he would just go back to that. Easy for him. I'm just going to keep hitting wide backhands. He can't run around it. And eventually he's going to miss one. And Berrettini knows that. And a player, and you know it's going to keep coming to your weaker side. It actually starts to mess with your head a little bit. And you start doing things you wouldn't normally do. Wait, Bilal, what do you think?
I'm surprised you both picked Berrettini to even beat Nadal. I think if there's one player who can exploit a side of your game when it comes to a backhand, especially, I don't think there's anything better than Rafael Nadal at that. I think that there, especially even though it's the grass, I think, like I said earlier, I think when Nadal starts cooking, he's in the second week, it's pretty tough for it to break his rhythm. I think given I think, like you said, we have to give Djokovic credit where it's due, but I also think at the same time, we have to think about what has he really done though in the last 12 months. I mean, if you talk about results, Djokovic hasn't had a great year. I don't really see, I mean, obviously Australia, he didn't get to play, but since the US Open, I'm just not sure if he is not saying he's not the same player, but he hasn't had a lot to really convince me that he's just going to take away this title. I think Wimbledon has been the place where he's had the most consistency the last few years. But I do think that Berrettini on a great day could push him 5. I don't think he could win. I think that's the most likely scenario. I think Berrettini could push Djokovic to 5, but I personally don't think that Berrettini's going to make it past Nadal. I think Nadal actually, if Nadal makes it past the first week, I think Nadal wins the title. I think you cannot stop Nadal when he knows that this year there's an opportunity. I said earlier, I don't know.
Even with his foot. I
think he's down.
I think the foot right now looks fine.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The foot, he's not talking about it because it is good. That's the thing. He is playing, he's practicing. It's not like he's really hiding any of it now.
I know Nadal, like,
I just think sorry, go ahead. I think it takes one 5-set match for Nadal to break down right now. If that's in the quarters, if it's against Berrettini,
on grass,
it takes that.
Yeah,
on grass,
the surface. I think the surface that saves him, like a 5-set match takes so much less out of him on grass than on clay or on hard. Because even if he loses the set, he's watching just a lot of serves go by him. He's watching a lot of it's more frustrating and maybe mentally exhausting, which is why I think maybe he could be ripe for the picking if he has a long quarters. But if his foot gets hurt on grass, his foot's going to get hurt on harder clay. I mean, like I know there's more stop and start, but I feel like at this stage in his career, he's just going to be ball bashing a little bit. He's going to be going big serve, big forehand. Returns, he's going to be going for it. That's what he looked like in the exos. I know they're exos, but he looked pretty aggressive.
Yep.
Yeah.
I will say as a medical professional and I love Rafa Nadal, I don't know what pain level he feels most of the time. I'm not saying his foot is overblown. I do think he talks a lot more about it than it seems to affect his play when you see him play.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, he looked fine in 5-set matches against Shapo. He looks pretty. I mean, Shapo, I think honestly what bothers him more is humidity and heat and the sweating. I mean, like against Tsitsipas in 2021, he faded Australia Open. He just looked done, like physically done. Yeah. And this year against Shapo in the quarters, he looked like he was melting, right? He was ice packs and water. But then in the final, again, Medvedev, he was fine in the 5-set matches because it was cool and it was at night. And I think that's the evolution of Nadal. Young Nadal loved the heat. He loved cooking. He loved sitting there for 5 hours with somebody because he knew he was fitter and stronger and going to last longer than them. Old Nadal is like, I don't want to be in the heat. I don't want to be cooking. I want to be in faster conditions that are cooler, where I can just hit through the court. And I know he always talks like he likes the sun for his balance. Wimbledon's not going to be hot. It's not going to be humid. It's going to be pretty easy from a physical standpoint for him. I don't, my issue with picking Rafa is just like, then you're saying he's 3/4 of the way to the calendar slam. I know every tournament's independent, but you're basically saying he's going to win 3/4 of the calendar slam. We saw how much that took out of Djokovic last year. It wasn't that easy. And unless you're thinking he's just playing with house money right now, and feel the pressure.
I genuinely think that is what it is. I think there's the one guy, and we all admire Djokovic's mental strength, but there's a difference in their mental strength. I feel like Djokovic loves to be down and then come back. Nadal doesn't love that feeling.
No.
Nadal likes to stay ahead. That's the difference. And Nadal has the lasting endurance when it comes to mentally sustaining his opponents. But Djokovic is different. Djokovic wants to be fighting from a place of adversity. And I think with Nadal seeing opportunity, I think he shines in that kind of pressure. So I'm not saying that it's a matter of him being 3/4 of the way to a calendar year slam. I'm just thinking that he actually is. I think he looks good. I think his draw is not bad. And I think when he gets some momentum, like he has not only throughout the year, but in a tournament like this, I think he has a great chance to really actually push to the end. If you look at 2018 too, that semifinal, I mean, that could have been anybody's match. I think against Djokovic, he has quite a good chance on this year. And I, like I said earlier, I'm not too impressed with anything Djokovic has really done this season.
Well, just to recap Djokovic's year, doesn't play Australia because he can't play. Doesn't play North American hardcore season because he can't play. Plays Dubai, wins a match and loses his next one. Clay court season was kind of meh, in Rome. And then a lot of people picked him against Nadal at the French. I mean, he looked really good. And he kind of no-showed for that match a little bit. I know it was a great match. The quality in the second, there was great quality to that. But mentally, he just disappeared in the third set. He was up a break in the fourth, and then Nadal just went up a level, and Djokovic just wasn't ready to get there. I mean, the thing that grass will mask it. He hasn't looked physically the same in terms of the stamina. And I don't know if this is just an age thing, Arjun, because Nadal sort of hit that point too. The first time I really saw where I'm like, he's fading a little bit. That 2019 US Open final, I know he beat Medvedev in the end, but he looked gassed at times in that match. He looked like at the end of the match when he fell to the ground, he was like, I need help getting up because I'm so gassed right now. And these are the same guys who in 2012 Australian Open, they ran around for 6 hours. And they were cramping at the end, but the amount of physical effort they put out, they can't do that anymore. And Djokovic, and then we saw Nadal against Tsitsipas fade last year. We've seen Nadal in other matches be like, you could sort of see it. And the commentators see it. And everyone's like, he's hitting the wall a little bit. This is the first time since he went on the gluten-free diet that I've looked at Djokovic sometimes this year and be like, he's actually hitting the wall. It happened against Davidovich Fokina in Monte Carlo, and it happened against Rublev in Belgrade, and it sort of happened against Nadal at the French. And I don't know. Some people said it's the lack of match play. Some people said maybe it's COVID. I actually just think he's older, and when you're older, you can't maintain that same stamina the same way. I actually think so. Grass will mask that because we just talked about short points. But if he gets into a long physical match at any point, I don't think he has the edge the same way he used to.
Exactly that same reason I'm choosing Berrettini over him. But Djokovic has not been the same even in finals or semifinals or quarterfinals against Nadal this past Roland Garros and Medvedev this past US Open. He in both those matches and against those against big opponents, he just kind of looked a little lost. He looked a little, I don't want to say old. He doesn't have gray hairs, but his movement, his energy level was just one notch lower than what we're used to seeing it at. Although last year, the first 3 Grand Slams, he was playing phenomenal. Djokovic, we can believe that he wins 1 slam a year for the next 3-4 years. And he could easily well overtake Nadal. But what we've seen this season and the end of last season, he hasn't been the same Djokovic that he has been since 2013. And with this slight little downturn in his game, I think that's a major reason why I think Nadal or Berrettini will take him out in the finals. And that's crazy to say that a slight, like a 5% downturn in his game still gets him to the finals. And it just shows how many levels there are to both to all of the big 3 players. With Djokovic just being down and out like a little bit, he still makes the finals of the last X number of tournaments that he's played.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons for that maybe versus Nadal or Federer is Djokovic is probably of the 3 the one with the fewest weaknesses.
Yeah.
He has, we've said this before, I think he has his strengths aren't as high a peak, in terms of a single shot or part of his game, but he kind of has no weaknesses. So you kind of have to take the match from him. Like Nadal had to kind of take that match, and Medvedev, he's not going to give it to you.
Yeah.
But I would agree. So I mean, if I had to say this, and if so, Bilal's picking Nadal, you're picking Berrettini, and I'm picking Djokovic because I'm boring. But I would say this: of those three, who are the three favorites,
Yeah.
I think the least amount of pressure, oddly enough, is on Nadal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really weird to say that about a guy who, if he wins this, he's going to be 3/4 the way the calendar's playing. It's like the opposite of Djokovic last year, but it's because he's ahead in the slam count. No one expects him to win Wimbledon. And then for Djokovic, I mean, this is kind of a bellwether event, not just for us as like people watching, but for other players. And for him, it's like, okay, you didn't play Australia and you didn't win the French and you didn't win the US Open last year. And what happens? This is your slam. Yeah. You don't win this one.
Are you
Who's
gone?
To say? Well, gone is strong, but like hard courts, I mean, there's guys coming up. Alcaraz is coming. Medvedev's going to be back. Tsitsipas, we hope will turn it around. Zverev, hopefully, he's not getting any younger, and there's no guarantees he's even allowed to come to the U.S. for the U.S. Open. So, I think he has added pressure on him because he only really had the French and Wimbledon this year that he definitely could play. So it's interesting to think about Nadal. Weirdly enough, despite being two slam holder, despite in theory, and part of it is also he's ahead in the race, right? So Djokovic is playing catch up still. Nadal is kind of I actually think Nadal, this is his last Wimbledon. That's my last take. I don't think he's playing Wimbledon again after this.
Really?
Yeah, I think this is one. And I think he's pretty been open. He's been open to skipping it the last few years.
Yeah.
And I think he decided to play it because his foot felt fine. And he's like, well, I'm half the way this calendar slam. I'm going to play it one more time to see. But I don't think he really feels pressure about it. And I wouldn't be shocked if lose or win, he's kind of like, yeah, this is it. I don't know what he's going to do long term, but I feel if he doesn't retire in the near future, he's going to prioritize the French Open. He's going to prioritize the US Open, maybe because he likes that event, but I don't see him prioritizing Wimbledon. I think this is it.
Yeah, I agree. I think, it's sad to say he's on the downturn of his career. Finally, it's been many years now, but this might be the last grass court tournament he plays. Probably not the last clay or hard, I think, but probably the last grass court tournament.
Well, we're going to wrap it there. We went a little over, but a lot of draw analysis, talked a little bit about legacy. Big tournament coming up. So great draw analysis. If you like, please subscribe on the YouTube channel or the podcast. And what we're going to do then, we're going to be back. We're going to give it a little break. We're going to let the tournament sort of play out. And then we're going to come back when we get to kind of crunch time. And I think in this case, we'll kind of come back around the quarterfinal, semifinal time. And then we can kind of be like, okay, where are we? Are we where we thought we were? Are we the same guys we thought were going to win? Or did this turn into the 96 Wimbledon where everyone lost early and all of a sudden we don't know who we're dealing with? We have to scramble to look up the names. Probably not. But Arjun, Bilal, great talking to you, and enjoy the tennis.
Of course. Happy Wimbledon.